All right. Well, it is 11 o'clock Pacific and 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And so hello, and welcome to the US Web Design System monthly call for June 2019. I have kind of a lot to get through today, so I'm not going to dawdle to see whether or not more people come in later. I'll just jump right into it. And today we're going to be talking about design tokens, so I may as well crib from last month's presentation and show you the color tokens we're using for the colors in our logo and on this slide. In general, with the slides and with everything I do, sort of with the design system in mind, like everything is built with these color tokens, with elements of type scale, elements of color, elements of spacing units. And since it's June, I may as well update the colors to add some warm summery tones, since we've definitely got some of that summer going on in USWDS Global HQ here in Portland, Oregon. And I hope you're finding some of that wherever you live, if you live in the Northern Hemisphere. So again, this is the USWDS June monthly call. Hi, thanks for being here. I'm Dan Williams, and I'm the USWDS project lead. As you might be able to see through some of the videos, I look at least a little bit like this avatar. It's worth mentioning that we're recording this call, and we'll publish it to YouTube and to DigitalGov eventually. So if you know of someone who missed this conversation and would like to see it later, we'll have a link to that sometime within the next week. So please mute yourselves and face mute as well if you don't want to be recorded. This month I have a stubbly beard, which I can now do glorious justice to in my avatar. There's some more on the avatar updates a little bit later. So what's on the agenda for today? First, I'll run through some product updates since we spoke in May. Then I'll spend most of the time today talking tokens with a deeper dive into what they are and how they're used in USWDS projects. And if all goes well, we'll have some time for Q's and A's at the end of the call. So without further ado, product updates. First, with Public Sans. Public Sans has released version 1.005. You may notice that it has a different naming convention than our USWDS and other repos that use semantic naming. This just happens to be the convention for typefaces, 1.005. And we expect to keep releasing updates through the next couple months at least. We're continuing to make improvements based on your suggestions at the Public Sans GitHub repo. This release has a redrawn eth character for any time Iceland is in the news, and improved Vietnamese diacritics to be more in line with best practices for that language and to help them read better at small sizes. We've also fixed some problems with the fraction slash and generally improved the display of fractions overall, as well as adding some spacing changes and a bunch of focus on spacing around hyphens and em dashes. In general, we're trying to tighten up the font and get it as good as possible so we can aim to release it on Google Fonts in August. There's a bit of to-do involved with releasing something on Google Fonts, and we want to just make sure that when we get to that release that we have the face as tight as possible, so we're not making a lot of changes to the way it displays going after that release. We certainly don't want to change too much in its spacing. But we're aiming for Google Fonts, I think in August for Public Sans. Next, USWDS for Designers, the sketch assets at our USWDS for Designers GitHub repo. The new assets feature new and improved avatars, as I so wonderfully teased earlier. There are a few more beard options, but the big thing is that their shapes and outlines have been improved and their colors are now synced with USWDS tokens, so that all of the various options for the avatars, like use USWDS colors in their clothes, in their skin tones, and anything associated with with the avatar. In a way, you can see through the example of the avatars here and elsewhere that the design tokens, especially the color tokens, give a relatively broad range of tonal output that's useful for all kinds of purposes. A bit more practically, the sketch files now ship with pre-built artboards and column guides set to USWDS device width tokens and with our default columns and column gaps built in. So when you're sketching or prototyping in Sketch, you can assemble your pages with some of our pre-built artboards, which should be a big help. And as we'll see a bit later, we've expanded these things called handoff symbols, tools you can use to help communicate the intention of your sketches and your use of design system tokens to a developer. If you're a visual designer and are passing things off to a development team, you can use handoff tokens to really spec out what you've done so everyone is on the same page around how it should look. And finally, USWDS 2.0.3 is out. This includes a nice bug fix that addresses a nasty little bug that prevented in-page anchor links from working properly in the top navigation. It's a small fix, but it's not bad. Also in the last month, we updated our website URL. Now USWDS version 2 can be found at the main design system URL, designsystem.digital.gov. And the version 1 version of our website is now archived at v1.designsystem.digital.gov. And that's most of what's new up to today for new product releases for the design system. There's, I think, a bunch of new and interesting things coming up for the next month for both public stands and for the design system in general. A couple good feature adds and some nice new things coming up in the next month. But the big thing I'd like to talk about today, and the subject of this call, is design tokens. Design tokens are one of the bigger conceptual differences from Design System version 1 to Design System version 2. And I'd like to talk a bit more about what they are and how to use them in projects from the early design phase up into production code. So to start, we'll kind of consider the lowly but critical button. The way a button, or any component really, appears on the screen is a collection of design choices, the elements or building blocks of visual design that are combined, remixed, and recombined to determine look and feel. These are building blocks like color, in this case, some shade of blue. The typeface also has a color of white. And the font or typesetting, which can include building blocks like typeface, font size and weight, letter spacing, line spacing, and line length. Spacing units as well, how far things are away from other things, how much padding or margin they have. And decorations like shadows. On the web, these decisions are commonly expressed with CSS rules and declarations like this button rule. Each declaration assigns a value to a property. The color gets a color, padding gets some spacing units, font gets some of these font things, box shadow gets a shadow value. And these kinds of values are expressed in all kinds of ways. There are plenty of ways to express colors, for instance. There's hex like we see here, there's RGB, HSL. For spacing units, there are pixels, Ms, rems, CHs, Xs, et cetera, et cetera. Similarly with font, you can spec out font in all kinds of ways. Size, the line height. All of this is very flexible, and that's something that's important about CSS, and that's something that's very useful for CSS as a way to describe how things look on the web. And if you use preprocessors to to develop your CSS, you can allow some of these values to be expressed as variables. But since it's CSS, like everything is prone to modification. Like you can always change back and forth, 10 to 12, 2.2 rem, 14 px. You can do whatever you want to do in the world of CSS. USWDS design tokens are another way to express these values. They're predefined palettes of values that are consistent across any design system project. Now, these values can be used like variables in your SAS rules, as we see here. These tokens are the strings and numbers that follow, things like blue 50V, a color, 2 units. Sans, SM, and 1 are 3 different tokens that combine to form a font rule. And box shadow, it's shadow number 2 of 5 available box shadows. So what do these tokens mean? Like, what do they output? Well, the tokens, their names and their values are all on our website at designsystem.digital.gov/design tokens. Like this page of color tokens. You can see the name of the token, like red warm 5, as well as its hex output, which is F6EFEA. So design tokens are the way that the design system tries to balance flexibility and consistency. Between flexibility that projects need in their visual design to adapt to real-world needs, and consistency, having the same look, feel, and experience between all sites that use the design system. But with strong consistency, there's a relatively small expressive gamut. If all of the pieces you use are all very rigidly sort of in the same sort of look and feel, there is a lot you can do, but it is still relatively constrained. If you have a lot of flexibility, that can give teams more expressive gamut. But when you consider all the possible choices, like that gamut or the range of design decisions you can make, when you consider all colors and all spacing and all type scale, when you consider that, it's not just big, it's like huge. It's near infinite, potentially. So in the balance between flexibility and consistency, the USWDS design tokens attempt to give a suite of design options and values that are somewhere in the middle. To allow like a broad expressive gamut that can adapt to project needs, but with enough consistency between projects that there's some meaningful relationship, and that designers and developers aren't starting from scratch when they start a new project. So if pure flexibility, for instance, is all like available color choices, the design system tokens create a limited yet expressive palette of choices that are common to every USWDS project. Like these are all the colors, with the exception of grays and vivid variants that are available to any design system project. And these are the colors that we recommend you stick to when you use the design system. And since any individual project won't need to use all of those colors, I think to some people that gamut might seem, oh, it's very constrained. I need to use a very particular kind of color. To some people, it's like, whoa, that's way, way, way too many colors. Like, how could you even have a design system with 250 colors in it? Well, every individual project won't need to use all available design system tokens. That's why we have things called theme tokens, which is a subset of the broader token set that's specific just to your project. And these can change depending on your project needs. It may start with these defaults, but you could change your theme tokens to be something like this. So your color primary might be green instead of red. Your secondary color might be gold instead of blue. And so blah, 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 blah. So we intend that essentially that any design system project should be able to express any of their visual design decisions with these palettes of design building blocks, with these tokens. That's how we've built our own website, and this is what we recommend to teams using the design system. And as we'll see in a moment, we've developed the design system design tokens to be used in every phase of design and development, whether you're a visual designer or whether you're developing in code. Like, you can and should be using these design tokens. You can use them in Sketch. You use them in design system project settings. You use them in utility classes, and you can use them in your final component SAS. And this can make more sense in practice, really, than in the abstract. So I'm going to try to show how tokens work in a project workflow using the tools that we use to build websites here. And these are the kinds of tools that I'm going to be using in this demo. On the GitHub side, I'm going to be using code from USWDS. I'll be using the sort of suite of design tools for Sketch that are available in USWDS for designers. To get my project all set up in Jekyll, I'm going to be demonstrating this in Jekyll and serving it with Jekyll. I use the Jekyll setup that we have in USWDS Sandbox. And to take our style sheets and compile our USWDS SAS style sheets into final production CSS, USWDS Sandbox uses USWDS Gulp. So use all of those USWDS projects. In addition, I'll be showing some things in Sketch. I'm going to be using a Sketch plugin called Symbol Swapper to do some of the things in code. I'm going to be using a text editor called VS Code. I also use the terminal to set up a lot of these things. I use iTerm. And we're going to be using Node and Node Package Manager to sort of collect all of these projects together. So, yeah, let's get to this demo. And I will exit this and head out to my desktop, where we have this screen here, but more importantly, we have sketch file. So excuse me. This is a sketch file that is based on what you find when you download the assets either from our website or from USWDS for Designers. When you download the package from USWDS for Designers, you get what you can see in this window up here of USWDS for Designers. It has this big package of things, which most critically includes the fonts to install on your system, and the sketch files that you would use to do any early visual design work. If we go back here to USWDS for Designers, it has a pretty good startup step-by-step. You need to install the fonts, as I said, and you also, to make this all work well, you need to install these Sketch libraries. Sketch organizes its symbols in these things called libraries, and we provide all of the USWDS assets and all of the USWDS token definitions as Sketch libraries. If we come back here, we see in the Sketch folder, there's this folder called Libraries. There's all these different libraries. There are colors, there are fonts, there are handoff symbols, etc. They're all in different library files. And in Sketch, they can all be installed in your Sketch preferences in libraries with add library. And looks like some libraries are not found. We will delete these libraries that are not found for now. Move. We'll do that a little later. So when you open up, when you get started with your sketch files, you want to install these libraries and you want to install these files. In addition, you'll want to copy the project files out of their home here in the USWDS for Designers package and add it to a new folder somewhere else. I've done this already. I've copied the project files over into this new folder that I've called Demo USWDS Agency. And I've renamed the project USWDS sketch file into something that is my fake agency, my Office of Measurement and Guidance. And I've renamed all the project libraries into my Office of Measurement and Guidance specific libraries. These are all the color libraries that include the color definitions that are specific to my project. They're the equivalent, and they are, in fact, exactly project theme tokens. So when I open up this this OMG prototype file, which is the copy of the one that I took out of this sketch thing, I get something that looks like this, with just a blank project and a number of assets included. All of the USWDS components are here. Headers, footers, searches, etc., and a space to put them all together in your own sort of workspace. Now, in my demo, I'm working with this Office of Measurement and Guidance. We're going to be working to develop a card component and get that up on the web. I have this copy that I have to start with, and we're going to try to build a card in Sketch using the tools in USWDS for Designers. One of the first things I'd like to do is in Sketch, I want to add my new project libraries that I just copied over here. All of these new ones over here. I want to add them in. And this is where I'll set up the new definitions for my theme colors. So like if I want to change the default primaries and secondary colors, I'll do them in all of my new libraries and then remap them. That's described in USWDS for Designers, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So if I open one of those files, like primary, I can see that this is how the system tokens are set up in Sketch. These different Sketch objects are my color tokens: primary lightest, light, primary vivid, primary dark. And I can remap, and I can map them to any color that I want. So if I get rid of this, using these styles. So if I wanted to change the color of primary from violet 50 to let's say I wanted it orange, I could do something like that. And then follow the instructions here. First, set the base symbols with system layer styles. Then make new layer styles by eyedropping the symbols and updating the layer style. So I could change all of these to some orange values. Go over and change these to a system color. Let's change them to orange 50V. And then I'll lighten them up to see what I want for this project. This will be, let's make this 30. Let's make this 20. We'll make this 40V. This 60. And we'll make this 80. So now I've set up my primary colors, and I will follow the instructions here, map them over with the eyedropper. And now I've set up some new primary colors for my project. I'll save this, and I can close it, and I can come over here. Again, all of this is something that I have collected in USWDS for designers. I'm essentially just going through this step by step here. So if we go through and we find something that is colored primary, like this primary button, we can come up and paste it over here. But we want to change all the primary colors in Sketch to the new primary color that I have just described, and do that with something called Symbol Swapper. And symbol swap these libraries. What I want to do is I want to change the theme. These are all of the various libraries used in the project, and what I want to do is I want to change the theme libraries to my project libraries. So I want to change theme accent cool to my OMG accent cool, and I want to change theme base to OMG base, and I want to change primary to OMG primary, etc., to OMG secondary. And I will do the same ID, hit swap, hit OK, do some updates, kaboom and kapow. And I've now updated all of my primary colors in this document. So you can see this sort of in action when you go over to something like the header, where the header now uses these primary values. So it's now orange in the button, and it's the dark version of primary in these menus. So anything that was once the USWDS default primary is now my project primary. And now I have, and now I'm sort of set up to do my design work. In a way, like setting this up in Sketch is like setting project settings in the settings SAS files in the USWDS project SAS, which I'll also show later. So how do we use this? How do we design using design tokens in Sketch? We use it using a sort of super symbol in Sketch called USWDS Block. USWDS Block is an easy way to sort of set up new shapes and to keep them in sync with design system tokens. Since block is a symbol, and in Sketch you have sort of symbol overrides here on the side, you can see that there are different overrides for this shape that are border radius, border width, background color, shadow, the kinds of properties that you would be adding to anything, whether it's in Sketch or in CSS. And the things that you can apply to them are USWDS design tokens. So for background color, you can add any of these design tokens here. You can add USWDS system tokens like green warm 40V, or we could add state tokens like an error state, or we could add some of our new project theme tokens that we've just added, like theme primary. All of these things like theme, like primary and red 30V, all of those things are the color tokens that any project would use using the design system. Similarly with border radius. If we go in and we look at the border radius options, we have all the kinds of tokens that you would see if you were also using component SAS. These are the 0, 1, 1px, 2, and 2px. These are all spacing units tokens. 2 is 2 spacing units. So if we have a radius of 2, that's pretty big. If we have a radius of 1, that's half as much. The spacing units are based on increments of 8 pixels. So So 1 is essentially 8 pixels, 2 is 16 pixels. Then we also have 1px and 2px in addition to those. So you set radius 2. It's not even super important that it's 8 pixels or 16 pixels. Like, you just know that it's radius 2, and you can communicate to your developer that for this new shape that we're using, we want to set its border radius to radius 2. And we can also set drop shadows as well. So there are 5 drop shadows in addition to no shadow. There's a teeny tiny shadow, as well as larger shadows that may or may not show up on the zoom. It's hard to say for sure. But drop shadows are yet another kind of design token that's available as a palette through Sketch. So we'll set this up as 2. We'll set the background color here as something really light. We'll set it up as base lightest. And this will begin to be our card. And we can begin to put a card together using design tokens and using design system components. I can cut this here, I can paste it in. I can begin to add elements from our copy here onto my card. I can add, for instance, our services. So just like color has been tokenized, so has font size. And just as font size is sort of, or as color is available through things like symbols and styles, so is font size. So USWDS font sizes in the libraries as well. So these are the system sans sizes. We'll set this as 9, size 9, bold, let's say line height 2. That's a good starting point. So it's not even necessarily important that this is 22 pixels for size 9. If it's public sans, okay, it's 22 pixels. If it's going to be Merriweather in the final version, like, it might be 20 pixels. If it's Source Sans Pro in the final version, it might be 23.4 pixels. It's like the pixel value is less important than the actual value of the token, which in this case is 9. We can add our services up here. We can do sort of measurements in Sketch to show whether we're at increments of 8 pixels. We want to be, in general, working with increments of 8 pixels. So we try to keep 8 pixels away from boundaries. If we want to be clear about this in the future, we can insert this thing called a handoff symbol. And the handoff symbol is something that says, okay, we want to have 3 units of boundary here, of padding. And the handoff symbols are a way to essentially redline a sketch file. So okay, we've got this basic card. It's got a background. It's got a title. I don't know if I want to give it a border radius. I'm thinking I'm not going to give it a border radius. I do want to maybe give it a border on the top. Let's give it a border top of 2 pixels. All right, it's got a little border on the top there. It's a little, maybe make it a little thicker. Half a spacing unit. All right, so we've got this, that. We'll add, we should probably have, we'll put some sort of an image here. Using Sketch, we'll plop in a random sketch tile thing. Kind of, let's see, 24 pixels, close enough. You also don't have to have it exactly right. If it's 24.4, 25, whatever. Like, if it's close to 20, if it's close to 24, it's going to be 3 it's going to be 3 spacing units. And you can always insert, at the end, you can insert a handoff symbol for a horizontal spacer of 3, or a vertical spacer of 3, if you want to spec it out. And then it's just like, this is 3. You don't have to like fart around with like just how many pixels it actually is. We'll do a similar sort of thing for the copy here, and paste it in over here. Plop, plop. Add this in here. Actually, not terrible in this monospace thing, but we can change it to something that's built with tokens. We will go to System Sans. Let's just say this is 6 regular, line height 3. Yeah, pretty good. 24, 21. We'll keep in our multiples here. And like, I don't know, this is 21 right now. I'll just kind of mess with it. And now I have this. Now I have this card. And I could, if I wanted to, begin to put some of these handoff symbols on it. I could say, okay, for this image, like, what is the size of what size should this image be? Like, should it have a particular aspect ratio? Like, it's a 4:3. All right, let's just say we're going to make this a 4:3 image here. And that's something you could hand off to a developer. Maybe I want this stretched across the whole thing because I want to fit in this whole piece of text. And now I have essentially a prototype here that I've built with USWDS Block that's set up with all of these different design system tokens, and I can hand this off to a front-end developer to work from this. And just sort of, this is another one, same thing. So now I have this card. Like, how would I then build this in actual code? Well, building this in actual code is a lot like building it in Sketch. It uses a lot of the same kinds of ideas. And if we head over here to this index file, I have, when I installed the USWDS Sandbox, it installs Jekyll, and it installs the design system, and it sets up all of the various settings files and SAS files that the design system needs. If we come over here and look at the tree, you can see that it's installed these theme settings here, and I can begin to set up my project the way that my designer has set it up, or the way that I want it set up. If I go into theme settings, I see that here's one for color. If I open up color, theme settings are set up to use design tokens. So the things we see here, gray, cool, gray, etc., these are all of the these are the system tokens that will then be mapped over to our theme palette tokens. So this variable here, theme color base, is establishing the base token for our project theme. If I come back here to Sketch and I open up the base, what I've used here for my base colors, I can see that I'm now using the gray warm for my tokens here, with 2 as lightest. I can change that in my project settings here by, I want this to be gray warm. And I want these to all be gray warm. Instead of 5, we've decided that this one for this project is going to be gray warm 2. Similarly, for the primary colors, this one is set up for, you can ignore this thing that says violet. All of these things are here set up for blue warm, but we want to use the ones that we just used over here in Sketch. And in Sketch, we're using orange 20, 30, 50V. We'll change these over here. Orange, that's not how you spell orange. Orange, 20, 30, 50V. This one was 40V. Primary dark, 60 and 80. So we've set these up as our new primary colors. And if I come back over here, we can't see this in action yet. But now we've set up these as our base colors. So if I come over and I build a new, component over here, I can use Design System Utilities to begin to build my card component out here. I've already set something up with a padding 2. 2 is a design token. I have this set up here that says Font Sans 12. Font Sans 12. These are the design tokens for type scale. 12 is the type scale token, and Sans is the family token. You use both of them when speccing out font. And if I make, let's just say, a little test div here, we're just kind of making a prototype here, so we're not at this point really worried about great markup. We're just trying to get something on the page to see if it looks okay. We can do background, primary, and let's just say, to test it out, we'll do padding 3 and add some save it over here, and there we are. It's added this thing that is our new background color of orange. In our mockup, we wanted our background to be base lightest. So we come back here, now we can see that this has changed into base lightest, and it has padding 3. We go through and we can see all of the different things that we did. Over here, we can now translate all of this directly into the code. If this is line height 2 over here and it's size 9, we can translate this into a little piece of code here. What was it called? Our services. And add the sans 9, line height, sans 2. Now we'll do this, and we will probably see that it doesn't fully work. Let me come over here. It's yeah. We also, let's take away some of the built-in margin. But we also, with utilities, not all of the utilities are included in the default package, you have to turn on extra utilities to get the numbered ones, to get the system tokens used. The default utilities only include theme tokens, so we should set some theme tokens. If we come back here to typography, we can set the size of our theme tokens. So right now we see that we already by default, like LG is 9. 9 is what we wanted. So in our code, instead of doing font sans 9, we can do font sans LG, and we're already set up with a theme token. If we wanted font sans 12 up here, we can go back to typography. This is our 12 is already set up as XL, so we can just use XL back in our code to do the same thing. So set that up, save it, come back over here, and now everything is sort of the size we expect. Right now, this is using source sans as the font. If we wanted to use public sans, that's another thing that we could change by changing something in our project settings. In typography, we can go up to where we've set the typefaces. The sans serif font right here is set as source sans pro. We can change that to, let's just say we can change that to public sans. So it will do its compilation. We'll come back over here. And now it's changed to public sans. You see, like it was relatively subtle because there wasn't a lot of size change between source sans and public sans because the faces have been normalized. You can change a lot of things. You can change this to system, for instance. This will use system fonts. And changing the font means just that you change the font. It won't necessarily change a lot around how it's the size of how it's displayed because of USWDS type normalization. And so you can then build something out using all of these various utilities in your code. And I have another one of these where it has been built out with all of the various utilities. I've built out this thing using BG base lightest, padding 3, border top 2 pixels, margin top 3. All of the things you see in here, all of the utilities are the design tokens. And if we reload up index card, this is what that looks like. Not guard. And so that would be what that looks like there. Let me just change this picture. Should be fonts and what was it? XL. There we go. And so there's the card, all set up using all of the tokens from our design files. But this is sort of a little bit it's sort of a little bit ugly. We you know, don't always want to be using utilities in our production code. There's a lot of reasons not to. And we're also not really using Jekyll that well to use Jekyll includes. We don't have to get into Jekyll includes, but we can begin to take some of the utilities out and begin to write what was previously written in utilities in our production SAS. We go back up here to our custom styles. We can begin to take things that were previously utility-based and write them in component SAS using the same things that we saw in Sketch, the same things that we saw in utilities, we'll now use in the production SAS. If we come back over here we have to, of course, give these things, class names. And I decomposed this into an include. So I have a card over here that is set up as an include, and things that were previously set up as utilities, I've now given a standard, like, sort of BEM style class name. And those BEM style class names I have set up here in my custom styles. And what I would do if I wanted to take the styling out of the utility and add it to the SAS, is you could just copy it out of this card title. We'll head back to custom styles. We'll go to card title. We can kind of start by pasting it in here, and because everything is named very similarly to the mix-ins that we use in component SAS, we can just do a little bit like this, and it's almost the same syntax. It's very close sort of syntax for using tokens in your component SAS as you would in the utility. I'll just finish this thing up, and then we can recompile and reload, and there, that's all set up. We might want to get these in alphabetical order or something nice, but now we've included some of this stuff as production SAS using utility mix-ins, using the design tokens to rebuild this card. And it will all kind of, it's all sort of the same there. So design tokens are the commonality between Sketch and utilities and component SAS. They're the palettes of values that we use when we're designing and the palettes of values that we're using when we are writing code. That those tokens can appear either as utilities, or they can be over here as mix-ins. They can also be functions as well. If you wanted to use something like, you can use a color function like red 50V. It can be written like that instead of a mix-in. All of these things are what we document when we're documenting in designsystem.digital.gov design tokens. So if we're talking about color, we can see on the color page that these are all the things that we see on the colors. These are all the various colors that are our defaults, and this is how we use them in all of these different contexts. The token is used in a mix-in and a function and a setting. They sort of travel throughout all these things, retaining their same sort of name and value. We can get into it more with design system utilities here. So that's how design tokens sort of are used throughout the design system. That's how you go into your settings files, and that's how you set different settings to use those tokens, and that's how you change the value of theme tokens to be assigned system tokens. So these are the theme tokens for type scale, medium, large, XL, 2XL, and these are the system tokens from which they're defined. I know that was sort of a lot to try to jam into 1 hour, but I will stop sharing my screen and see if we can spend some period of time with if anyone who has seen this and has any sort of question about that would like to jump in and ask anything about design system, design tokens. Let's see if there's anything in the old chat. Nothing in the chat. You can add it to the chat too. But we are going to be taking some of the content that I developed for this demo, and we're going to be adapting it into some smaller videos that we'll do around some more constrained topics, and we're going to be adding this into some of the guidance and step-by-steps on the site. When using Block, can you have more than one border style? No. When using Block, you can only have one style per block, and that is the same if you're building with utilities. If you're assigning a border style to an element using utilities, it can only have one border style per element. For instance, it can't have a solid top and a dotted bottom. Thank you. But you know, if something like that begins to feel like a really hard, painful constraint, like then we can work to see if that if it's something we need to adjust. So I will just do a little bit more sharing here to put up our contact links. If I can be so lucky as to bring this back up. These are our contact links. They are still the same as last time, but if you have seen something in this presentation and after trying it out for yourself, it still seems kind of crazy or difficult or whatever, like we can help answer any questions through any of these through our public Slack at USWDS Public. Through our email address, uswds@gsa.gov is our reaching out email address, and the subscribe goes to an email listserv that we will be launching very, very soon. If you find problems or have other kinds of questions that might be more appropriate through GitHub, you can always file an issue or submit a pull request through github.com/USWDS. That's our organization where all the various repos are held. And of course, designsystem.digital.gov is where we're trying to keep the best guidance up to date on all of these topics. I will keep this up for just a few more moments and then see if there's anything else here. Yes, so a reminder that the next call will be in July, on the third Thursday of July, as all these calls will try to be on the third Thursday of the month. We are expecting to try to put together a little bit of a panel around migrations. So part of what we were doing here was to begin to establish how things are built in version 2 using design tokens. And what we'll talk about next is hopefully some real lessons and some examples from folks who have been through or are going through a migration as to what's the process of moving from version 1 to version 2. There's some folks that I explicitly want to reach out to, but if you have some experience with this, I'm happy to hear from you if you have some experience that you want to share. Do you plan to release the design assets in anything other than Sketch? Yeah, yes, and maybe. I would like to, but practically right now it's probably too much work for me to rebuild it in right now in something like Illustrator. I would love to be able to rebuild it in Illustrator if I had the time. To be, in many ways, a program like Illustrator or something in the Adobe family are in many ways better at doing things like styles. So it could actually work pretty well in Illustrator, but I haven't had the time and I don't expect to have the time soon to rebuild in Illustrator. We did have some requests to try to rebuild the assets in Figma, which I really wanted to do, but Figma was on a pilot program and that pilot ended, and it doesn't look like it's going to be going through ATO process anytime soon. So actually being able to work on Figma doesn't look realistic at this time. If there are any other questions, you can chat them now. Otherwise, we will. Oh, let's see. Do you know if there's a maximum amount of section labels for the global nav menus in terms of space and or usability? So like the number of sort of top level menu items maybe for the nav. There isn't a max in anything other than, certainly it's not constrained by code. It is constrained by space and usability. We don't have specific guidance around how many is too many from a usability standpoint. I think we would need to collect some more information around whether or not 9 is too many. You could get away with more if they are shorter. I tend to think that the sweet spot is probably around 5 or 6. And once you get too many more than those, then that's probably too much choice. But that's just gut. That's not official guidance. You gotta test your nav with a tree jack or something just to see what's important. In my own experience, we always want to have more, and you want to fight to have fewer. Well, thank you for coming out today. I really appreciate it. I think that we're expecting to have something really nice for next month as well. Have a very pleasant June and July in the interim. It is the 4th of July in the interim. I hope that is a nice holiday for everyone. And until we meet again, we will see on the internets. I appreciate it. Thank you.